So, as an internist, when I hear you say things like, we're either diagnosing cancer or pre-cancer, I guess I bristle a little bit at that. But I do see what you're talking about, and I've discovered that.
What we mean by that is in an environment where so much attention is given to the problem, there is this underlying raging stream that says the problem's in there somewhere. That's really what we're saying with all of that. We know that there are exceptions to that, certainly.
I think I've come to see that as a physician, or in anything that I do, I can either focus on well-being or I can focus on disease, but I can't do both.
Perfect.
So it kind of puts me in a quandary. I guess I should close up shop and go fishing or something.
Actually, you don't have to. You can just practice enough virtual realities that your propensity is toward the wellness, and you can find it anywhere. And you can be right in the middle of a healthcare profession that is oriented toward looking at disease, and you can see the disease sparingly, long enough to help you identify with the rocket of desire that's going off within the body of your patient, and feel it clearly yourself, and you can find your way swiftly to a solution if your vibrational proclivity is toward the solution. Our hammering is not about all physicians, but it is about the proclivity to push against the disease. In other words, there is a huge misunderstanding that in the moment that it turns in anyone, success begins to happen.
So what I see in practice is that if somebody comes in to see me and I say, well, how is your pain today? Or how depressed are you? Pretty soon, both of us feel pretty bad.
Not only that, but then you begin to orient yourself in that way. And something even bigger happens. You become such a vibrational match to that kind of patient that they flock to you.
Right. So I've come to an interesting place that I recently discovered that I have some elevated blood sugars. And it's kind of funny because when I get in there and start thinking about, well, the stuff that I've learned and about the foods that I eat and medications and all this stuff, it's like there's really nowhere to go with that. There's nowhere. It's like looking at the problem.
And activating it.
Right.
And when you have activated the problem, even though solutions exist, they're not on your radar screen.
And I think I hear what you're saying about this too, is that if I quit worrying about what I eat and what my blood sugars are or any of that, and I just spend my time feeling good, that none of that matters anyway.
That's right, but remember, it's the proclivity to thought. So let's take it away from you for just a moment and talk about your counseling another. So let's say that you are counseling someone who clearly has symptoms in their body of discord and disease. And no question about it, they are manifesting it, and they know it and you know it. And you, in Abraham terms, are wanting to deactivate that within them and in you and activate well-being. But it would feel utterly irresponsible to you to not address their diet or not address their medication. They might even take your licenses away from you if you got too far apart from that. So what do? And here's what we're really wanting you to hear, all of you. No matter where you're standing, the action part of your experience is far less important than the vibrational part of your experience. So here is a very nice bridge. Do the action that is prescribed and let your virtual reality be about finding well-being. Because it is the proclivity, it is the tendency of thought. In other words, you could go through the motions of practicing your medicine and offering the prescribed medication for the condition that exists and let that be what you're doing in that moment when you're wearing that hat. But then when you're not in that moment wearing that hat, go to the beach, put your feet in the sand, practice these virtual realities until within a short period of time, even if you're working 8 or 12 or 16 hours a day doing something else, you can shift the balance of your vibrational tendency to something that is more optimistic. And then what begins to happen is you see the whole shift in the way law of attraction brings people to you. In other words, different people come, or you activate different things within them when they come. There are all kinds of studies. We know you could speak them more clearly than we can, of miraculous things that happen in the midst of things that just should not happen. And no one understands that it is because something happened to activate a different vibration, you see, every time. So we are talking about dominant beliefs, thoughts that are activated. And it's not difficult to understand how a dominant belief or thoughts that are activated could actually be taught to a physical body. In other words, it's not hard to understand how a physical body could begin to pick up those vibrational characteristics.
Right.
In other words, when the whole nation believes something, when the whole world believes something, when it has been my experience, then I tend to believe it. And when I really believe something, I'm pretty convincing. In other words, you see parents convince children, or religions convince their converts, or, in other words, that's all that influence or conversion is about. It's association with something so long that you begin to vibrate there. You can find whole cultures that have these beliefs that just seem idiotic to you given what you know, and yet almost everyone in the village believes that because they've practiced it. And so what we are suggesting here is that you can, with enough attention to a subject, convince even the cells of your body of something. But there is nothing that anybody, you, your village, the cells in the village in your village, the village within you, there is nothing that cannot then be reoriented to the well-being. But it does take that determination that Esther says I can damn well choose. It takes that determination that you're going to put your thoughts upon something that does feel good.
But if you put your determination on correcting this thing that
now you've activated the problem.
Right.
That's the catch-22 in all of this. Okay. And so here we're going to make a very bold statement. Any disease could be healed in a matter of days. Any disease. If distraction from it could occur and a different vibration dominate.
Okay.
And the healing time is about how much mix-up there is in all of that. In other words, how much am I going back to that? It isn't so much like a weight and balance thing. Well, I thought 47 times about my problem and 87 times about the solution. It's not about that. It's about I practiced the thought of my problem enough that I kept it activated, so law of attraction kept bringing me other symptoms which then I observed. In other words, it's more about that. It's that I thought the thought which brought another thought, which then I thought, which brought another thought, which then I thought, which brought another thought. And we say, so don't think that thought, which will bring another thought, which will bring another thought. And then you say, well, I don't have enough discipline, so I think that thought. And then we say, then you kind of stand where you are. You're back and forth thinking about what you don't want, what you do want, what you don't want. And so it's the proclivity that we're working on. It's the practicing what feels good. And that's why you can't sort it out on a thought process, because when you are evaluating thoughts, thought is a thought. When you get in a certain vibrational wavelength, you have access to any thought along there. And that's why we say you want to feel your way through it. You want your dominant intent to be to feel good. Now, I'm not monitoring my thoughts so much as I am producing feelings. I'm deliberately setting scenes and deliberately focusing my mind. And you can get pretty good at it. We watched Esther find a scene that felt really good, and then find a thought that didn't feel very good. And she got on this sensitive edge where she could invite someone in and feel good, invite a different person in and feel bad. Or get to a place that feel good and then think about something else. And then she began to discover that she could say, well, I just don't need to think about that. She could get to a good feeling place, but she's still a little cluttered in her vibration. So she would think something that didn't feel so good, and then she would think, well, I don't have to think about that, and then she would feel good. And she'd say, well, and I'll think about that, and that would feel good. And that would feel good, and that would feel good, and that, oh, I'm over the edge. Well, I don't have to think about that. In other words, you just fine-tune yourself into vibrational compliance with well-being. That's the process.
Okay. You've said several times something like, our disconnection almost always has to do with issues of not loving self what do you mean by almost? You said it before and then backed up and then said almost always.
Well, we are almost always qualifying because surely there is an exception to that somewhere. Here is the statement that we make. Whatever you're focused upon is the reason for your vibration. And so if you are feeling disconnection from who you are in this moment because you're feeling very critical about something that someone else has done, it may seem that it really is purely about what they are doing. But if you were really in a place of centeredness, if you were really in a place of connection, then you wouldn't have that activated within you, which means even if it is activated within them, you wouldn't rendezvous. And so it actually is accurate to say it is always about your vibration. But people aren't always aware of their own vibration, so we always stick that little qualifier in there just so that we don't meet with resistance every time we say it. When you're not feeling good and you think it's somebody else's fault that you don't feel good, and we say somebody should do something about this and it's always you, we really mean that. And that doesn't mean that you wouldn't feel better if they would be different. We know you would feel better if they would be different. But you can't count on them to be different, and if you need them to be different, now you are in an eternal trap because now you always need somebody to be different. And there's only a handful of them that care about you enough to pretend to be different. Self-worth and loving self is only about being a vibrational match to who I really am. When I'm full of myself, I adore everything. It's a tricky subject because humans have been taught that they should not adore themselves.
I know.
You've been taught that that's the wrong approach, and yet it is such a necessary approach. And so it's really a rare one. They have to be pretty young for them to really love themselves in the way that we want all of you to love yourselves. You've trained that out of you.
Well, we all start out that way.
Yes, you do.
Loving
yes,
ourselves.
you do.
We
and
know
then
exactly what we want, and we'll have nothing else.
And then your mother says, "Please me, not you. It's more important to me that you please me than that you please you." And she makes you believe it. In other words, in time, you agree with her. It is better. It is better to please her than to please me.
If Mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. I'm wanting some clarity regarding emotion and the relationship to the solar plexus. I think there's a lot written about the brain and how we think, and that's sort of how everything happens. There's not a lot written about how we feel and even where emotion comes from. It's always written about in terms of the brain. But when I feel emotion, I feel it here, not here. It actually, sometimes I think it's out here a little bit.
Well, that's a little bit like saying, why can't I hear with my eye? Or why can't I smell with my ear?
Okay.
And you say, well, there are different parts of my body that are physiologically set up. And the thing that makes this different is that your emotion is in response to vibration. Well, so is your sound. Mm-hmm. So is your sight. Everything about your physical senses are vibrational interpreters. And so we would say your solar plexus are just the place that you feel your emotion, in the same way that your ear is how you hear.
When I was studying anatomy, I couldn't help but notice the relationship or the coincidence maybe of the location of what's called there's a group of nerves called the celiac plexus, which is sort of at the center of our being right here. And I'm like, it's kind of strangely the same place as our solar plexus. And I've always wondered, is that
yes.
where we feel emotion?
Yes.
Is that the
yes.
core of it?
Yes.
Okay, that's clear.
That's good.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed.